Were you prepared when you came out on the Thinking Muslim, shout out to them, uh, and spoke out against Saudi Arabian politics? Were you prepared for not ever being able to make Umrah or Hajj again?
I did not anticipate that the interview would be taken that seriously. And bear in mind, it wasn't the interview itself that got me in trouble. It was the videos that I did beforehand that had already been noticed by some of the Saudis and the like, and there were responses from those who are associated with the Saudis and the like. I think that I anticipated that there might be backlash. But the another thing as well is, bear in mind, I grew up in an environment where, my father was heavily involved in politics and criticizing a lot of the regimes, involved in the activism in Tunisia and the like. And he also paid the price. I mean, his life was, this government gets upset, etc. And I grew up seeing what that backlash used to look like. So in many ways, you're a bit desensitized to it. So it's not like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened or that kind of thing. It was more, I saw how my father, as long as he kept sticking to saying what was just and right and haqq, and Allah always looked after him. If a door slammed shut here, another door opened over here. So I grew up in an environment where I believe that, yes, there might be a backlash, but the same way that happened to my father, where a door shut and another opened, the same would happen to me. And alhamdulillah, I mean, I'm nowhere near the age of my father, but I can say that in my limited experience, that does happen. Stand for what's right. Allah opens up a door and, elevates your status as well, alhamdulillah.
What do you think is the best governed Muslim country today?
Muslim country.
Muslim country.
I can't think of one off the top of my head. Why? Because I think that Ibn Khaldun says, Al-adlu asasul mulk, justice is the foundation of all dominion. And sometimes when people, the immediate thing that people, or country that people often mention is either Turkey, Malaysia, or some of these places. But I think that if you rule a country for 20 years, and as a result of political expediency, you are able to go to the judiciary and kick out the Khashoggi case because you have an economic crisis and you desperately need to reconcile with bin Salman for money. If that happened in the United Kingdom, where the Prime Minister intervenes in the judiciary and throws out the case, the government would collapse. The British people would not tolerate it. That sort of interference in the law of the land and the judiciary of the land is unacceptable, in a way that reminds me when Amr ibn As radiallahu anhu is writing a letter to Umar ibn Khattab. Umar Khattab radiallahu anhu has asked him, describe for me the people of Rome. And he says, these people don't bow their heads to authority. They're always challenging the authority and the like. They're always insistent on a certain way of life and they respect it. I think that when I saw that after 20 years, a president in a Muslim country is still able to do what Eastern sultans have done for enter the judiciary and sort of, I don't think a state is built on personalities. I think it's built on institutions. I think that when people mention Malaysia, and Allah barak, you want to get me in trouble with everybody, but okay, I think when people mention Malaysia, Malaysia is lovely. It's lovely to live in. The environment is wonderful. It's great. But I think that when you see the way that Malaysians are unable to appreciate the power they actually have, they always say we're a small country, limited population. But when you look at the fact in 2019 that just holding a Kuala Lumpur summit with Turkey, Qatar, with some of these, Pakistan, with Indonesia, that sort of shift, the leadership that Mahathir Mohamad brought, trying to shift the Muslim leadership from the Gulf to that part of the world in protest at what, the Saudis and the UAE were doing. I think when you look at the panic that bin Salman felt and UAE felt, and that they would threaten Imran Khan and tell him, if you go, we will cut funding. They threatened Joko Widodo, the president of Indonesia. There was a panic there because they believed that power was genuinely manifesting. So I think that Malaysia, for example, is a country with huge potential to manifest power, but does not do so because it's mired in its own internal issues. And I know that you've asked me, where's your ear? And I've gone sort of round, The issue is that I think that there are serious governance issues in the Muslim world generally. But I don't think necessarily it's because of leaders themselves. I think it's more in terms of the perspective of what does a state mean? What does a state look like? And I think we're still stuck in the idea that it is built on personalities as opposed to institutions. that we will read, for example, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say, "Wallahi law saraqat Fatimatu laqata'tu yadaha." If Fatima radiallahu anha had stolen, then I would have applied the hadd, I would have applied the punishment on her as well. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, the law is above everybody, even my own daughter who's beloved to me. But I think that when we talk about caliphates of old, we don't talk about structures or institutions. We talk about personalities as if somehow in our heads it's the personalities who are the core pillars of the state, and if they disappear, then somehow the state will collapse. And I think the best example is, I won't go on too long about it, I remember in the last Turkish elections when Erdogan was against Kılıçdaroğlu, and everybody panicked that if Erdogan loses, then everything, the sentence was, everything that's been achieved in the past 20 years will collapse. But the most immediate question that popped up in my mind was, why is it so dependent on Erdogan? He had 20 years. Umar al-Khattab had 12 years ruling. Abu Bakr Siddiq ruled for 2 years. Uthman bin Affan ruled, I think, 18 years. What is it in the manner that Erdogan ruled Turkey that means that the institutions remain so fragile that if he goes, everything collapses? And I'm not saying this to berate Erdogan or the like, but rather to ask ourselves the question, how is a state built? Is it built on Erdogan? Is it built on Emir Tamim? Is it built on, Mahathir or Anwar Ibrahim? Is it built on bin Salman? Or is it built on the concept of justice and institutions and a social contract whereby the people agree to uphold justice regardless? And as a result, leaders emerge who know what the people expect, who know that the institution should be respected. And therefore, even if it goes through a difficult time, the institution remain on hand, because Ibn Taymiyyah is the one who said that Allah will allow a kafir state to prosper, will allow a just state to prosper, even if it is kafira, and will destroy a Muslim state that is unjust, even if it believes. Because Allah can tolerate kufr with justice, but does not tolerate Islam with injustice. Meaning that as long as, and Ibn Khaldun has interested here, and I promise I won't go too long about this, but a lot of people think that I'm talking from a divinity perspective, as if like I call it the Dajjalic way of interpretation, that this is based on a spiritual logic. And it's not. It's not only is it based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has called upon, but Ibn Khaldun argues about the practical reality of what happens when there is no rule of law, when you don't respect the rule of law. Even if the ruler is somebody who is, very ostensibly Muslim. Ibn Khaldun says that people thrive in freedom, and that people thrive when there is clarity in terms of what is and what is not allowed. When we know what is halal, when we know what is haram, the Muslim knows where the boundaries are, and therefore they are able to innovate within those boundaries. But when they're not clear, they stop innovating. For example, let's say me and you have a business, and mashallah, we succeed and we become millionaires and the like. But the whim of somebody who wakes up, like what happened to Şehir University in Turkey when Erdogan clashed with Davutoglu, Erdogan basically smashed Şehir University, an institution that was becoming one of the top globally. He smashed Şehir institution as part of his beef with Davutoglu when they fell out with each other over how the state structure should look like. Erdogan wanted another term and Davutoglu didn't want to be a puppet prime minister. But in any case, Ibn Khaldun says that when a ruler can wake up one day and say, I'm taking this much land from Mahmud, I'm taking this much land, and there's nothing he can do, there's no recourse. The extent to which you do that is the extent of the decline of the civilization. Oppression heralds the end of a civilization. Why? Because if people start seeing that Mahmud ma adrak, and mashallah how hard he worked, and he established all of this, and he became a minister, etc. If bin Salman or Erdogan or bin Zayed or whoever can wake up one day and smash your business, what's the point in me exerting all the effort that Mahmud did if at the end of the day a leader can just wake up and smash me? No rule of law, no judge to intervene, no, even though he's doing it wrongly, but I have no recourse. So what ends up happening is the people take Mahmud as the example and they say there's no point exerting a lot of effort to establish these new ideas, to establish these big businesses, to establish something to rival Google or to rival, Meta or the like. So one of two things happens, or both at the same time. One, people no longer have high aspirations. They settle for much less, which means there's less innovation. And the second thing that happens is you have a brain drain, because the Mahmouds who are particularly ambitious say, if I can't achieve it here where I am, I may as well go to America. I may as well go to Europe. I may as well go to a place where there is not that ceiling, that I can have that protection from that ultra virus power, from the overarching power that can violate me. When that brain talent leaves, you no longer have talent in your market, which means there's even less innovation, which means there's less companies, which means there's less revenue, which means less taxes. And with less taxes, there's less investment in society, and it starts to deteriorate. So more people start leaving. And as more people start leaving, the taxes become less because there's less revenue, because there's less talent, because there's less innovation. And it's a vicious cycle to the bottom, all because the ruler refused to uphold the rule of law that guarantees the certainty for someone in society to start to innovate. So when I go back to your question, Sami, what do you think is the best governed Muslim country? I think, in my opinion, the best governed Muslim country is one where there is rule of law, where if it is me against the leader of the nation, if haqq is with me and batil is with the leader, the law and the judge will be in my favor. And I cannot think of a single Muslim country where that happens, but I can think of non-Muslim countries where that happens, such as the United Kingdom, where I come from. Well, I'll be brutally honest with you, and you can ask people who live in the UK. Yes, you can see Islamophobia. Yes, you can see xenophobia in many quarters. Yes, you can see dhulm amongst the government and the like. But did you know that the only reason the Home Secretary could not deport the migrants to Rwanda was because one judge in a court said it's illegal? And the government could not do anything about it. That when the government wanted to crack down and increase surveillance and the like, the judge came and said this is illegal, and they could not do anything about it. There is a social contract where law matters. It doesn't mean there aren't subversions of the law. What it means is there is always recourse. And I think, and I end with this point, I think the best example is that in every Muslim country, without exception, there are issues that can only be resolved by calling Mahmoud or calling Sami or calling Jalal or calling whoever. Please, can you go speak to whoever works in there, please, because I'm stuck. In the UK, you don't do that. You don't need to call whoever. You call the customer service or you go to whatever and you resolve it. Why? Because in the Muslim countries, there is a power greater than law, and that is the wasta, that is the connections. But in the UK, law supersedes the connections. And as you can see now what's taking place, Keir Starmer is in trouble. Why? Because people paid for his football tickets to go see a football match. They said, why did they give you that money? Why did they buy you those tickets? What influence were they trying to get? Boris Johnson's being harangued because he lied to Parliament or lied, etc. And no connection can save him from that. And that's why I think the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in many ways, it's like a saying, I don't know who said it, but he said, I did not find Islam. I found Muslims in Muslim lands, but not Islam. And I didn't find Muslims in non-Muslim lands, but I found Islam. Implying that Islam is not just about belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's belief in what He wants to see upheld in this world. And that is rule of law, justice and equality between man, which is why Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu had the humility when he became Khalifa to say that if you see me do what is right, support me. And if you see what I'm doing wrong, correct me. In every Muslim country, I dare you to say that the leader is doing something wrong. The consequences are not tell me why. The consequences are how dare you disloyal individual, and you get a series of tumbling consequences as a result.
Sami Hamdi, one of the top political analysts in the world today, especially considering the Muslim and Middle East. Thank you so much for joining the Ansari podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Barakallah feek for having me, Mahmoud. I've been following this podcast for a while, mashallah, so it's good to be here.
I've been following you as well, alhamdulillah. SubhanAllah, that was supposed to be a warm-up question for you. But I mean, what you're saying is obviously very true, and we've all felt that. And it's one of the reasons why I'm here and you're in the UK. But there is almost this system of legal corruption, especially in the United States. I don't even think this is in the UK. Stuff like lobbying, where politicians are openly getting donations and bribes from corporations and illegal. One of the interesting things that you said before and said to me in private was the Zakat money situation that most Muslims don't know about, and would that correlate to lobbying?
I think that this is best told by a story to avoid a backlash from people who might come after me for it. I think that, so there is a brother who I think you should interview, Sheikh Suhail Hanif, a very dear friend of mine, and I consider one of the geniuses of our ummah. So one day we were in Australia together. So Suhail, mashallah, is a lovely person to have a sahara with, to sit in the night and discuss with. So we were sitting in my hotel room, and I said to him, Suhail, I always thought that one of the reasons the ummah was always on the back foot compared to all of these other groups that you mentioned and the like, is because the ummah does not have the resources, or does not have the abilities, or does not have. But I told him, I went to America. Look at what we're seeing in Australia. Look what we've seen in the UK. Look what we've seen elsewhere. The ummah does have money. The ummah does have resources. The ummah does have ability. The ummah does have talent. The ummah does have people working for all these top tech companies, and they are integral parts of it as well. They have knowledge, etc. So the issue has never been resources. I told him, I have a suspicion it's about how we spend resources. For example, people are giving so much money to charity. I said to him, people are giving so much money to charity with regards to Gaza, but that charity is getting stuck at the border because we give 97% of our money to charities, and we're proud of it. We say we are the biggest, donors to charity and the like. But I don't know if it's something to be proud of anymore, because that 97% of charity that we spent is stuck on a border with Rafah that was shut by the lobbying, that by the money spent on the lobbying that Zionists spent. So for example, if the Muslim is spending 97% on charity and 3% on everything else, the Zionist spends 50 on charity and 50 on lobbying. The 50% investment in lobbying got 97% of charity stuck. The 50% of lobbying got the 97% of charity perished on the border because it couldn't get through, because it was delayed, because the 50% smart investment that was made ensured that that 97%, doesn't matter how big it is, was unable to achieve the intended aim. And therefore the question becomes, and I remember saying to him that, is it therefore accepted if you give charity knowing it could get stuck, whereas you could invest in something different that could get that charity through? So we were discussing and talking about this, and there is a statistic that shows that American Muslims, I think, when the collection of their zakat, I think, is more than a billion in the US every single year. Something there's an incredible statistic. It's a huge number that they give to zakat and they give to charity every single year. It eclipses what AIPAC spends on lobbying in the US.
I know Muslims in total 600 billion. I think Muslims worldwide give 600.
Muslims worldwide. So I think that the statistic I was looking at was America at the time. So it's a huge, it's an astounding number, and it's what Zionists spend on AIPAC pales in comparison. Like, there's no comparison between what AIPAC spends and between the zakat. Zakat is way higher in terms of its money. So I remember remarking to him and saying, subhanallah, if we took just less than 10% of the money that we spend on sadaqah and on that zakat, I think we could make a tremendous difference in terms of advancing Muslim interests in the Western world. So he looks at me and he says to me, Sami, the Hanafis, they argue that zakat is built on 8 pillars, and that the ummah really only invests in the first 2 pillars, 1 or 2 pillars. They invest in the fuqara and masakeen, and they invest in one other. But he said the interesting thing is what the Hanafis argue are the 7th and 8th pillars. I said, what's the 7th and 8th pillar? He goes, the 7th pillar is that zakat can be given to anybody who can be considered to be defending the ummah. I told him, financially, I'm okay, I don't need the zakat. He goes, no, that's not my point. My point is, Sami, is that if you see somebody who is defending the ummah, defending the izzah of the ummah, defending the honor of the ummah, often it doesn't come with financial benefits with it, right? Because you're challenging systems and authorities. Zakat can be given to these individuals or these groups to ensure that they have the means to continue defending the ummah, and so that the dunya does not overwhelm them, that forces them to retreat and stop defending the ummah. Zakat can be given in that regard. And one of the examples that he didn't give, but somebody else gave later on when I mentioned what Suhail said, he said it's like Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, when he became Khalifa, one of the first things he did is that he went to the market to trade. And they said, why are you going? He said, because it's my means of sustenance. So they said, no, take from the Baytul Mal as a salary, so that you're able to do your job as Khalifa and not be distracted by what you need in the dunya by going to the market. But he said the 8th one is the mad one. He didn't say mad one, but it's the way I heard him say it. The 8th one is a very interesting one, he says. He speaks in a very English way, very interesting. It's like when the English, when I tell you your idea is rubbish, they tell you, I understand what you're saying, but they don't tell you your idea is terrible. So Suhail says the 8th one is the one that's very interesting. I said, what's the 8th one? He said, there are some who argue, at least amongst the Hanafis, because he's a Hanafi faqih, mashallah. He said they argue that zakat can be given to non-Muslims that might have animosity to Islam, to make them neutral while you focus on another enemy. the idea of trying to buy a neutrality while you focus on a more immediate enemy who causes harm. And I said to him, if you're telling me that I can go to America and tell them, guys, your zakat money can be used to finance a couple of campaigns here and there to topple some rabid pro-genocider who voted to send arms to the Israelis to bomb the Palestinians, I told him I'd be lynched. I would be lynched by the Muslim community in America, who would say, how dare we spend zakat on these systems and the like? How dare we spend? I only give it to charity because I can measure the charity. I told him, Suhail, I know my community. My community only invests in tangible things, not intangible things. Zionists invest in intangible. Zionists invest, for example, when you look at Ben Shapiro in his channel, tangibly measure his impact for me. It's very difficult. You can't tangibly measure his impact. You know he has impact. You know he has influence. You know Tucker Carlson has influence. But you can't tangibly measure it. Even if you were to look at the views, those wouldn't be the whole views because many people download the videos and they re-upload it and then there are many views elsewhere. So even in terms of those numbers, they might not be accurate. How many times has Jalal done a podcast with an individual? It gets maybe, 100,000 views or the like. But the clips that he cuts or that other people cut on TikTok end up getting 1 million plus. Jalal will never see the 1 million plus. Jalal, when he goes to a donor, they'll just see 100K and be like, what's this Thinking Muslim? You only got 100K views. They don't realize that somebody else has cut the clip from Thinking Muslim, from the content he created, and now suddenly it's gone on 1 million views, or clips that you've cut, for example, that have gone viral or the like. So the Zionists appreciate that this has huge impact. They appreciate the intangible things you can't measure are still worth investing in. But the Muslims, they say, I will only invest in something that's tangible. I need to see 10 food packages for $10. I can't be investing or giving money on something that I can't measure, on something that Mahmoud and Sami will simply come about and they'll be like, yeah, we measured it because we were able to influence people to go and punish genocide. Prove it. I can't prove it. I don't have tangible metrics to prove it, but the community can see that there was some sort of impact. I told Suhail, I can't convince the community to invest in something intangible, like media channels, like journalists, like analysts, to, for example, give zakat to people who, for example, have a camera in their room and they are trying to sway public opinion to talk to other audiences in such a way that Candace Owens goes from being pro-Israel to pro-Palestine. Tucker Carlson starts saying we need to cut funding to the Israelis. I don't want to give my zakat to organize a trip for Ta-Nehisi Coates to go and see Palestine. Yes, he went there 10 days and he suddenly went from pro-Israel to pro-Palestine. Yes, 10 days completely transformed his perspective, but I don't believe we Muslims should be giving money for these non-Muslims to go and change their opinions on the Ummah or the like. It's something so weird. And that's why I said to him that if I enter the room of donors and I said, guys, I want to take a group to go and see Palestine or a group to go and see what the Ummah looks like, they say, Sami, this is a waste of money. I will not allow zakat for it. I will not allow my money for it. Even if it's not zakat, I will not give you money to do this because I can't measure that particular impact. So I said to him, the people will lynch me. And I remember he made a remark. He might not remember making it, but he made a remark where he said, this is why we spend so much on zakat, but it never seems to resolve the inherent structural problems. We keep giving it to fuqara and masakin, and there are only more fuqara and masakin. Whereas zakat was designed to be an institution that would eventually elevate people, but it's always stuck there because we're only investing in 2 of those pillars. So it's bent, so it never finishes constructing that institution that eventually brings about the hadith, which is you will struggle to find people, fuqara, to give zakat to. So I know I've done it in a long-winded way, but I do think that, and it's a Kuwaiti analyst who said it, I think Sheikh Muhammad Faqih from Memphis. We were sitting together a few days ago and he showed me a video. I'd seen it before, but he showed it to me full length. He told me, watch the full video. It's about 2-3 minutes. And this Kuwaiti guy had measured how much money Muslims give to zakat worldwide. And then he measured how much money AIPAC spend on lobbying and how much this organization spend on lobbying. There is no comparison. Muslims have way more resources than the resources that are investing in lobbying. And therefore the question that I ask, and I don't have an answer for, which is why I said Suhail would be better to talk to about this. My question is that even if you were to take some of that money and invest it in lobbying or those defending the ummah, you would still be spending way more on zakat and on fuqara and masakin. You wouldn't actually, the numbers would still be astronomical. If you took just 1% or 2% from that, you would match what AIPAC spends. If you took just 1% or 2%, you would match every cent or every penny that AIPAC spend on their lobbying. And I do wonder that perhaps if we altered our perspective on zakat in terms of, and the way I always say it is, if we were are able to look at Islam not as a Dajjal with one eye, where everything we do is about the spiritual boost as opposed to the political and social revolutionary aspect that the whole seerah was about. The Prophet ﷺ, his message shook the people of Quraysh in a way Christianity did not, because what he was presenting would transform society. I think that if we altered our perspective slightly on some of these concepts, I do think perhaps that maybe we will find that the Ummah was never weak because it lacked resources. It was weak perhaps, if I am to concede to this word, if I have to, it was weak perhaps because of the manner in which we spent those resources and the limitations that we imposed on ourselves that Allah did not impose. Limitations that we imposed on ourselves on how we spend our money. But I will finish on a positive note, which is that I do think things are changing. When I look at, for example, Zeteo by Mehdi Hassan, ignore his views on, backing Kamala Harris and preferring Kamala Harris as in the next election. I do think that when you look at the emergence of Zeteo, when you look at the increasing, attention being paid to either Thinking Muslim or your podcast or some of these others, I do think there is a change of attitude where people are naturally coming to the conclusion, is there a better way to spend my money rather than just sending it to the charities? And I think that these days when you sit with donors, I think the debate has certainly widened a bit. Whether it's widened enough is a different question, but I do think that if we alter the perspectives a little bit, the Ummah can achieve much more than it's currently achieving.
Hey, Salam guys, I'm very excited to finally release our Patreon account where you can become a monthly supporter and invest in the Ansari podcast and get ad-free episodes, exclusive interviews that are usually unreleased in the final cut. And if you want to see us bring on more and better guests, more and better equipment, and more and better shows, then subscribe and support us at patreon.com/Ansari podcast. We've partnered with Cure, the original black seed company founded by a Palestinian woman. These are some of the best gummies that I've ever had. They're black seed and honey gummies with a splash of apple cider vinegar. You can find them at cureyourworld.com or follow them on Instagram at cureyourworld and use the Ansari code Ansari15 to get 15% off. Get yours today. What would your response be to Mehdi Hassan saying that we should vote for Kamala Harris?
First of all, I should state that I don't think it's good optics for two Muslims, and I believe Mehdi to be sincere, to be seen to be chugging it out against each other. I won't respond to Mehdi Hassan himself, but rather I will appreciate that it doesn't come from a bad place, even if I believe the conclusion to be spectacularly misguided. I understand that Mehdi Hassan and others argue that Trump will be worse than Kamala Harris. And in fact, I actually agree that as individuals, Trump may well be worse than Kamala Harris. The reason why I believe Harris should lose is not because I believe Trump is worse than Harris. I believe the consequences of somebody winning a second term on the back of genocide is worse than anything Trump could do. It's not I believe Harris will do anything worse. I believe the normalization of genocide as an election winner, because the reason Harris is not stopping genocide is because if she stops it, she will lose. Biden believes if he stops genocide, he will lose. Harris believes that if she stops the genocide, she may suffer like Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, whose only mistake was they called for a ceasefire. Jamal Bowman voted for the Iron Dome. Jamal Bowman voted for weapons for Israel. It's just that later when he heard the loud backlash to it, he thought, let me hold the stick from the middle and call for a ceasefire as well. What Jamal Bowman did was, he was saying that Zionists were once invincible, but maybe they might not be as invincible as they was before. So let me hold the stick from the middle and appease the other side as well. The Zionists said, the fact that you doubt our invincibility is unforgivable. We will show you what invincibility looks like, and spend 24 million on a race where even after gerrymandering, the population should be pro-Israel anyway, but they didn't want to take any chances. They spent 24 million to punish Jamal Bowman. My contention is, Mehdi Hassan argues, and so do these others argue, and Mehdi will forgive me, I know that he has right of reply, etc. But Mehdi Hassan argues, based on what I've read about, is, guys, you don't understand, Trump will be much worse, things will get much worse. And maybe there is a grounding for that argument. But I'm not arguing that Harris is worse than Trump. I'm arguing the consequences of a party winning an election on the back of genocide, winning an election because it believes genocide is the way to win. A party that believes that if it stopped genocide, it will lose. The normalization of such a political calculation will be so disastrous and catastrophic for American democracy as a whole that it would be better if Trump wins. Because at least American society would say that we punished the Democrats for genocide. Now it's time to fight Trump against fascism. But the story of the American society and democracy would be that we are a society that fights genocide and fights fascism. We're a society that refuses to accept either. That is better than a society that says that that genocide is better than fascism, making a choice between the two evils. I'm saying that the American society should make a choice between neither evil. That even if the consequences Trump should win, prepare to fight Trump rather than forgive that genocide itself. But what I would say is, I would say that the presentation of the argument that Trump will be worse than Harris, because initially I said, let's suppose. But the basis, the premise of the argument that Trump will be worse than Harris, the reason why I emphatically resent it so deeply is because it is always posed without proper framing. It is always presented with the picture, the canvas turned the other way. What I mean is, it's not presented alongside the picture of Sidra's legs blown off that Biden and Harris did. It's not presented, Trump will be worse than Harris, alongside the picture of Hind Rajab and the phone call where she begs for help and the Israelis bomb the ambulance and proceed to shoot 325 bullets at her car and let her die surrounded by the corpses of her family. The argument that Trump is worse than Harris is never presented alongside the canvas of Reem, a 6-year-old, being held by her grandfather, Ya Ruh Ar-Ruh, killed for no other crime than some random Westerners turned up and said, this is our land and we have a colonial power supporting us. Ha ha, there's nothing you can do about it. Get out of your homes and we're occupying it. And Jacob from Brooklyn, he leaves Brooklyn. Brooklyn's quite nice when I saw it. I don't know why he left it. But he left Brooklyn and he goes and he occupies the land and he says, if I don't take it, somebody else will. Shame. Okay, get out of here. The argument is never presented alongside the canvas of the picture of Gaza being absolutely devastated and all the homes destroyed. That canvas is pushed aside because the only way you can believe Trump is worse than Harris is if you shut your eyes to the disaster that's happening in Gaza. When you look around you and say, there's no bombs here, here doesn't look like Gaza, it's a nice room that we're sitting in. You're only able to say it if you are able to establish some disconnect between you and what happened in Gaza. And not only that, one of the tragic things is, why would you tell genociders that you will still back them through the entire election season? Why couldn't you shut up? Why couldn't you shush? At least from November until October. Why couldn't you bluff? Why couldn't you imagine you're sitting on a poker table and bluff that you're going to punish? Why is it in January you said you were willing to forgive genocide? Why did you say it in February? Why did you say it the day after the uncommitted vote? Why did you say it in April? Why did you say it in May? Why did you say it when Netanyahu attacked the West Bank? Why did you say it when Biden sent the arms to the Israelis? Why did you say it when Biden put TikTok? Why couldn't you shush? Why couldn't you shut your mouth and bluff that you were going to punish? Why did you reassure them? Why it wasn't even, the vote wasn't in January. It wasn't in February. You said, you uskut, sakkar fummak, shush, bluff and let them believe you will punish them, so that maybe they will sweat in a bit that will make them change. Why tell them that the genocide is not a red line? Why proactively go to the White House and sit and say to Biden that yes, you've slaughtered Palestinians, but we'll still vote for you, but show us a bit of empathy? Why? How does it make sense that while they're beating up your brother, you're walking by going, are we still on for that venture capital project? Are we still on for tonight going to have a few drinks? We're still on for tonight to discuss the project that we're doing. We're still on, yeah? While he's beating, why? What possessed you? When Reuters wrote that Biden's campaign manager said that the damage inflicted on us by Gaza, by our support for Gaza, is greater than anything that we imagine. What possessed you the following day to write an article in Politico to say uncommitted doesn't mean we're abandoning you? What possessed you? Why, when they were scared, did you go to reassure them? Why at the DNC, when they refused to let you on stage, why do you sit there 4 days outside the DNC and you say to them, we know you're killing the Palestinians, but we're still gonna help you? And so why? Oscar, even if you plan to vote for the Democrats, shush until November. Do you see Zionists airing the differences in their community, saying maybe you've forgiven us? Zionists are quiet until November. Why did you open your mouth? Why did you come out and say it could be worse? 240,000 Palestinians killed, and still you kept saying we'll vote for you. Bombs on the Jabalia refugee camp killing 400 people in one bomb. You came out next day and said we'll still vote for you. Said that our legs blown off. The next day you say we'll still vote for you. They airdrop aid and they kill Palestinians with that aid that was airdropped. The next day you say online, we'll still vote for you because it could be worse. Leh, why? Why? Uskut, shut up. Shush. At least until November, play poker. Don't show them your hand. Don't show them the cards. Because what could have happened, and I tell you a funny story. When I was in November, when I came here, I sat with some of the other organizations. And one of them said to me, Sami, we're representatives. It was an official meeting. I just came to give a talk and go home. They said to me, Sami, what do you think our strategy should be? I said, in my opinion, Trump could well be worse. But I think that if Democrats truly feel like they will lose because of Gaza, they might change their candidate from Biden to somebody else. But that requires us to really give the impression that we're genuinely going to abandon the Democrats. We have to all sing from one hymn sheet and say we're going to, and I think by February, March, I think they will remove Biden because the Democrats, they don't love Israel more than they love their seats. If they know support for Israel is going to make them lose, they will swap Biden. They'll find an excuse and they'll get rid of him. That's not what happened. They eventually removed Biden, but only because he flopped in the debate. It wasn't because of Gaza. I know some people want to claim it's because of Gaza. It wasn't because of Gaza. And the proof is, look at Kamala Harris. She didn't change her policy on Gaza. In fact, she's worse than Biden because Biden at least used to say, you know, both sides are hurting. Kamala Harris won't even allow them to speak at the DNC. And when they tried to protest, she said, I'm speaking. I believed in November that there was a way in which you could actually still vote Democrat in November. That if you could give the impression they would lose because of Gaza, you could subvert the Zionist influence and they would change their candidate. That's why it breaks my heart that in February and March, when Reuters are reporting that the Democrats are gathering to discuss whether Gaza will really hurt them in November, while they are at the table debating, Muslims went to them and said, just so you know, we're still voting for you. They went, really? Look at these guys. All right, bombs away. Let's keep supporting. We don't need to halt it because they're still going to vote for us. And that's why when I respond to the argument, my argument is not that it's built on a premise that these are evil people who want to forgive genocide. My argument is, why did you open your mouths? Why did you scream from the hilltops that you would still be willing to vote for genociders? Why did you keep reassuring them when they were panicking? Why did you preemptively go to them and tell them, don't worry, we'll still vote for you? Why did you go and ask for crumbs when the Palestinians didn't ask you to? Why did you go and give cover Muslims for Harris? Why did you go and give cover to this genocide on the day that Lebanon gets bombed by the Israelis? Why do you keep reassuring these Democrats publicly that you're ready to forgive them and that genocide is not a red line? I cannot for the life of me understand this. I cannot understand this tactic. I cannot understand this strategy because wallahi, in my opinion, the genocide could stop tomorrow if Muslims took a stand. The reason it continues is because they don't. In 1982, King Fahd called Reagan and he stopped the attack on Lebanon. In 2001, King Abdullah called Bush and he stopped the repression of the Second Intifada. Bin Salman hasn't called Bush yet, hasn't called Biden yet. But the problem is that the Muslims themselves, they could have said in Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Nevada, Arizona, areas where Muslims potentially have the deciding vote. They could have said genocide is a red line unless you stop. Unless they didn't. They said that, guys, our community is divided. Can you please give us a few statements here and there to keep our community at least on board? And this is the point that I'm saying, that when you say, what would you say to those who say we still need to vote for Harris? I would say, may Allah forgive you, because there could have been a situation where you might have genuinely gone and voted Democrat, but you ruined it because you opened your mouth. You ruined it by reassuring them. You ruined it by you kept raising your voice and saying to them, we'll still vote for you. All you had to do was shush, and you did it. This is not to Mehdi Hassan. He's been annihilating the Zionists and he's been doing a wonderful job at it. But you didn't need to tell Democrats that they were the better option. You could have said to them, we're ready to abandon you. You didn't. You reassured them. And that's why Kamala Harris today, when she makes the gamble, who should I offend, Zionists or the Muslims? She doesn't dare offend the Zionists because they said, you stop genocide, we'll punish you. She said, let's offend the Muslims because they keep telling us proactively that they're ready to forgive us.
And you said tragically and sarcastically the other day that it seems that the Zionists are more principled than the Muslims in this scenario. I would even make the argument that Trump is better than Harris, even in office, because of his branding of being a dictator and being someone that will end democracy. He's a political liability for the Zionists. If he shows himself to be, yes, go, kill them all, kill more, suddenly Europe and the Democrats will become anti-genocide. It'll be very difficult politically to side with Trump, who you've labeled as a dictator, as a Hitler type.
I haven't, but yeah, go on.
Not you.
Other people, yeah.
The Democrats actually themselves have labeled him as such. And then he goes and supports a genocide that's very hard politically to pull off. So Trump is a political liability for the Zionists, and that really helps us as Muslims strategically.
Because the Democrats have a lovely face. I always argue that when Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, the EU didn't follow. Not because they don't believe in moving the embassy, but because Trump did it. It's ugly when Trump does it. If Harris had done it, it would have been historic. If Saudi had normalized under Harris, it would have been historic. If Morocco normalized under Harris, it would be historic. When Trump does it, it's transactional, it's ugly, it's nasty. But when Democrats do it, it's the same action, but there is a makeup. Meaning that when you resist it, you won't find your allies quickly on your side because the other side has a nice and pleasant face. So the reason I paint this scenario is, let's flip it now and Trump wins instead. I argue that Democrats are pro-Palestine in opposition and Zionist in power. Democrats are on your side in opposition, against you in power. Democrats know they need you to win, but they abandon you when they're in power because they don't need you to stay in power. The Democrats, if Trump wins, every argument you have against Trump, they will epitomize it and they will support you in it because they will do anything to topple Trump. They will throw the kitchen sink. Your language will actually be normalized with Democrats in opposition than if they are in power. If I'm calculating who do I resist better, it's easier to resist Trump than it is to resist Harris.
Well, what I want to ask you, though, is, hey, Salam, guys, I'm very excited to finally release our Patreon account where you can become a monthly supporter and invest in the Ansari podcast and get ad-free episodes, exclusive interviews that are usually unreleased in the final cut. And if you want to see us bring on more and better guests, more and better equipment, and more and better shows, then subscribe and support us at patreon.com/Ansari podcast. We've partnered with Cure, the original black seed company founded by a Palestinian woman. These are some of the best gummies that I've ever had. They're black seed and honey gummies with a splash of apple cider vinegar. You can find them at cureyourworld.com or follow them on Instagram at cureyourworld and use the Ansari code Ansari15 to get 15% off. Get yours today. Who should, because we shouldn't vote for Harris. That's a given. Any Muslim who does that, I don't, may Allah forgive them. But between Trump and, for example, a Jill Stein or a third party, who should Muslims vote for?
So one of the things that came to my attention was the Democrats were trying to sue third-party candidates, one in particular, a lady. They were trying to sue her off the ballots in a number of different states. Now, the Muslim political mentality, as it currently stands, is the system is rigged, system is against us, there's no hope, we have no power, and Zionism is supreme. And the Democrats, we're exaggerating the Democrat fear of the Muslim vote. So why are the Democrats trying to sue the third-party candidate? The Muslim will tell me the third-party candidate can't win in the US because it's a two-party system. Okay, so why is there a targeting of third party? What is the threat that they see that you don't see? What's the threat and concern that they see that they are spending so much money to try to get them off the ballot? What is the threat they see that you are unable to see? What is it they're concerned about? What's the scenario that might come about that worries them so much that they're trying to sue this candidate off the ballot box? What is it that they're worried about? You're saying they should be at ease. Why are they not at ease? And then I came across a law in the United States whereby it says that if a third-party candidate gets 5% of the vote nationwide,
the popular vote,
the popular vote nationwide.
So not the electoral for anyone.
Not the electoral college. Nationwide, they get 5%. Meaning, because I've been to some states like Sami, here it doesn't matter. Here it's blue or here it's red. It doesn't matter. That's irrelevant in this case. You could be in a hard blue state and vote third party and it would go to that 5% nationwide.
Popular vote.
You could be in a hard red state and vote third party and it would contribute to the 5% popular vote, 5% nation. The reason I say nationwide is it doesn't matter where you are in America. If that ballot of yours goes to third party, it goes to this 5%. If they win that 5%, the law is that they are then able, right now they can't, but now they are able to access federal funding, which significantly increases their capacity to compete with the other two parties. And on top of that, each state has an individual law where if a third party gets some range between 2% and 5%, if they get 2 or 5% in the state itself, they are also entitled to state funding to compete at state assembly and local levels as well. What the Democrats are worried about is the anger over the genocide is such that Muslims and non-Muslims, I've been across America, non-Muslims are so committed to punishing genocide. I've met so many of them. They are worried that not only will they not vote Democrat, they won't stay home. If you're not going to vote Democrat, it's better to stay home for the Democrats. They are worried that these people won't stay home. They'll actually go and vote third party. They'll actually go vote in particular for Joe Stein. They are worried they'll actually go vote for the Green Party. They're worried that they won't stay home because if you're not going to vote, stay home. At least that way, you don't cause me this 5% problem. Because if Joe Stein gets 5% and the party is now able to compete, what is the voter base that she's most likely to take from? The Democrat voter base. Meaning right now, the Democrats are only facing off against the Republicans. But now not only do they have to face off against the Republicans, they're hemorrhaging votes because of a moral calamity that they brought about, in that their support for genocide horrified their base so much that until the Democrats can make repentance for it, they will start going to the Green Party and permanently hamstring the Democrat capability of going up against the Republicans in at least the next 3-4 election cycles. For the Democrats, the worst case scenario is not that they lose the elections. That's bad. The worst case scenario is that they lose the elections and third party gets 5% nationwide. Because then if the third party gets 5%, in the next elections, they have to make very different calculations in terms of how to beat the Republicans and to come back to power in the first place. And that's why when people are saying, you know, in the next elections, we should stay home. Democrats want you to stay home. Zionists want you to stay home. Zionists want you that if you're not going to vote Democrat, stay home. Don't give your vote to a potential 5% candidate. That candidate, they're not worried the candidate will win. Because I hear many people say she won't win. They're not worried that Jill Stein will win. They believe she will lose. They are worried that if she gets 5%, it sets a course for a third party to finally break the two-party system, because that party now becomes kingmaker. That party now has the finances that might be able to get its seats in Congress, that might be able to get seats at the state assembly, and they will end up being kingmakers between the Republicans and the Democrats, meaning that for the first time in American history, that two-party system is broken and now you have a third party. And I'm from the UK. Third parties play a big role in propping up governments. The reason why I mentioned this point, and this is to finish on this particular point, which is the core, the crux of it all. The Zionists are terrified that Democrats will lose and the third party will get 5%. Why? Because if Harris loses, it will be because of Gaza. It will be because she supported Zionism unconditionally. it will be because she backed the Israelis unconditionally. That will be the sole reason she loses. Why? Because right now it's on a knife edge. She could win with it if the Gaza thing hadn't happened. It's the Gaza that will deny the victory. Because I saw a post by some of these other brothers who said, no, she will lose because, you know, people are upset about this economic policy, etc. That gets you to a knife edge. The economic policies and whatever, etc. That gets you to the knife edge. What decides it is Gaza. Without Gaza, Harris could probably win against Trump. Gaza is what will make her lose. So Harris will have lost the presidency because she supported the Zionists, because she had listened only from AIPAC, because she took their money. John Hudson, because it's not just my analysis, John Hudson wrote, the analysis is increasingly capturing the difference between what Zionist donors or what donors are asking of Biden, which is unwavering support for genocide, and 13% of Democrats who are considering abandoning the party because of this condition. This, in simple terms, he's saying that Biden is getting millions from people insisting he supports the genocide. But his support for genocide might make him lose even after he takes all those millions. Those millions will still make him lose because the condition of the millions won't rescue the votes that he's going to lose because he supported genocide. So the Zionists are terrified of this scenario. That Harris loses because she supported them, that Harris loses because she gave them unwavering support. And not only that, the Democrat advantage is broken because a party has now got 5% of the vote, not because the party has any interesting policies, not because the party itself is great, but because this party became the vehicle that people manifested their anger. And as a result, now this party is recognized as a third party. It's able to compete with the Democrats. When the Democrats sit around the table, they won't say, thank God we backed a genocide. They will say, was backing the genocide worth it? Was Israel worth it? Were the Zionists worth it? We took millions from them and still lost. We backed them and still lost. We supported them and still lost. When the Zionists go knocking on their door in 2 years, to support them in the midterm elections, the Democrats will say, hang on a second, we took your money last time and still lost. We supported you last time and still lost. I'm sorry, you're not invincible in the way that you were before. We'll support you, but we need a Palestinian state. We'll support you, but we can't give you unwavering support. We'll support you, but we can't give you the level of support that you wanted because we need to go and consult with this group of people who took to the ballot box. They never did before. They never used to vote properly before. They never used to engage before. But because they hated you so much, because we backed you, anything where you are involved forces these thousands to come out and vote and punish us. We don't want to be seen too close to you. You're not a political asset the way you were before. You're now a political liability because the president lost because she supported you, and now we're wrestling with a third party because people were so angry they went and broke our advantage. This is the point that the Zionists are worried about. And the reason why it upsets me when people say, go vote Harris again, is because the Zionists, I know that you're hearing from right-wingers that they want Trump to win, but they want Trump to win on the basis that Harris loses because of the economy. If Harris is going to lose because of Gaza, they'd prefer Harris to win. If Harris is going to lose because she supported Zionism, they would prefer Harris to win. The only reason they want Trump to win is they believe that if Trump wins, then maybe they might have some support for Trump that perhaps Harris hasn't given. But if Harris is going to lose because of Zionism, they want Harris to win. They are willing to preserve their invincibility over losing it. And the proof is when they put the tweet out that 99 races run, 99 races won, and the amount of unprecedented money they spent to topple Jamal Bowman and to topple Cori Bush, and the amount of money they spent considering going against Rashida and subsequently not going against her because they didn't want to ruin that invincibility record. The Zionists, the worst case scenario for the Zionists is that Harris loses because she supported Gaza, because she supported the Zionists, and that the third party gets 5%, permanently breaking that advantage, because the Democrats, when they sit at the table, they will say, guys, we lost all of this not because of economic policies. We lost all of this not because of our social policies. We lost it all because we listened to a bunch of Zionists who gave us a lot of money and we still lost. We shouldn't have done it. We need to alter our course in the way that we go. And that's why I think that punishing is the way to go. If you punish the incumbents, not just at presidential level, if you punish the local incumbents, anyone who the AIPAC want to win, what will end up happening is you'll have a bunch of incumbents, Democrat and Republican, who lose their seats because they supported Zionism. Then the journalist will go and he will look and he'll be like, what's the common denominator between all these incumbents losing their seats in the congressional election? Because both Democrats and Republicans lost. What's the common denominator? The common denominator is there are thousands of voters who never used to vote. Suddenly they came out. What made them come out? Excuse me, what made you come out and vote this time when you never voted before? They say Gaza. I wanted to punish genocide. The headline will be that everybody who supported genocide, or a large chunk of those who supported genocide, lost their seats because they supported genocide. What does the alternative candidate do in the next congressional elections? They say the incumbent last time, my rival, lost because they supported genocide. Thomas Massie, what did he say his Congress, his colleagues are saying? We don't want to speak against Israel because they'll punish us at home. But what happens when you break that aura of invincibility? What are the calculations of the candidates? What happens if Adam Smith in Seattle loses for his support for genocide? What happens if Greg Landsman loses in Cincinnati because of support for Zionism? It doesn't matter if the other side is Zionist. What matters is, why did the incumbent lose? In the UK, one thing that I realized the difference between America and UK is, here in America, when you vote as if it's like an identity thing. This is my identity, I vote. We vote to punish. This MP was terrible, we go out, we punish him, we bring the next MP. This MP was terrible, we vote, we punish. We know we can't deliver candidates, except in some areas. We vote to punish. Americans, for some reason, I feel it's like a new concept that you vote to punish. That you teach a lesson to that one. The next one comes, you teach a lesson. The next one comes, you teach a lesson. And that's why, for me, going back to the Harris and Trump debate, it's not that I believe that Trump is truly better than Harris or the like. It's that I believe that the consequences of a president winning a second term on the back of genocide will cement Zionism so much that, if you think about it, who will ever challenge Zionism again in Congress? When the congressperson says, we backed a genocide and they still won. Support for Zionism is so integral to our success that it is better to support Zionism than to stop it. I think this is dangerous. And this is the point that I want to finish on. And this is what breaks my heart. What breaks my heart is not necessarily only what the Democrats did, what Biden and Harris did. In many ways, you can expect that Biden wants to see the eradication of Palestinians. Biden has always been a Zionist. I expect that of him. What breaks my heart is the Zionists are panicking. They truly believe their invincibility will be destroyed in November. They truly believe candidates are going to lose because they supported Zionism. They're spending unprecedented amounts to prevent that from happening. They truly believe that they're on the verge of an existential crisis, their lobbying power, because for the first time, candidates might lose because they supported Zionism. They truly believe that a candidate might lose because of Gaza, because they supported the Israelis, and that could have sweeping ramifications on their ability to lobby. They truly believe that this is the first time they're in an existential crisis, which is why they're spending so much money lobbying to get encampments broken up, to get TikTok banned. They're truly in a panic. When Muslims say that it doesn't matter who wins in November, they're both pro-Israel. If the Israelis believe that there's nothing to worry about, why are they spending so much money, Mahmoud? Why are they going to all of these extents in order to lobby when both presidents are pro-Israel? What is it they fear? They fear they will lose their invincibility. They fear that the election will produce losses for people who supported Zionism. So tell me, Mahmoud, how I reconcile that the ones who have the power to deliver that punishment will instead go and rescue Zionism when it's in an existential crisis. When the Zionists are panicking that they might lose, that candidates might lose for supporting them, it's the Muslims debating whether to go rescue Zionism so that they could go and vote for Harris and rescue her so that they could protect the idea that Zionism equals invincibility, Zionism equals second term. When the Zionists are panicking, the Muslims are considering going to the rescue of the Zionists. When the Zionists are worried that their invincibility is about to break apart, Muslims are debating whether to rescue it by going to rescue those candidates and going to vote for them. When the Zionists are spending millions to try to tell the Democrats that support for Gaza, that support for Palestine will make you lose the way Jamal Bowman lost and Cori Bush lost, it's Muslims who are thinking, let me go and confirm and reinforce the Zionists by letting Harris win even after she supported a genocide. Why would you save Zionism when it's bucketing? Why would you save Zionism when its invincibility is finally under threat? threat? Why would you rescue them when they believe they're in existential crisis? Why would you willingly go for the sake of some comfort that you established and some status quo that led to a genocide anyway? Why would you go when the Zionists are worried that Harris will lose because she supported Zionism? Why would you go and say, Zionists, don't worry, I will still support Harris even though she gave you unwavering support? Why? Why would you go and rescue Zionism and affirm to the world global order that if you disobey Zionism, you lose, if you obey them, you win? Why would you go and tell the world that you can win a second term if you listen to the Zionists and commit a genocide on their behalf? Why would you rescue them when there's a real chance that you can finally flip the framework, you can flip the order, you can finally demonstrate that Zionism is a political liability? Why would you rescue it and affirm that it's a political asset? Why would you rescue it and affirm that Zionism wins you elections when you have the ability to prove that it does not? This is what bewilders me when I look at what's happening here in America. In the UK, I accept Labour were always going to win. Conservatives were just so bad. But I tell you something interesting about the UK that maybe the Americans will learn from. When Jalal was knocking on doors and some of these other people were knocking on doors in Ilford North, they had a candidate, Layan Muhammad, a Palestinian, who went up against Wes Streeting. Wes Streeting is now the health secretary. He's tipped to be the next leader of the Labour Party in the next 10 years. The area of Ilford North has tens of thousands of Muslims. They're at least maybe 20%, maybe more of that constituency. They can swing it. When they knocked on the doors of the Muslims, non-Muslims would say, I'm going to punish genocide. Muslims would say, I'd love to. In theory, it might be possible, but I don't believe it's possible. You're good people. May Allah reward you, but I don't think it's possible. And they stayed home. When the election night results came out, guess how much she lost to West Streeting by? 500 votes. One masjid, one Jum'ah. You know, the Muslims, when they found out, those who didn't vote, those who went and forgave genocide, they said, I didn't realize it was so close. I didn't realize we had the chance. I didn't realize the opportunity. If I had known, I would have gone and voted for Layan. But what's the point of your regret now? Why didn't you believe when it was there? Why didn't you believe when all the data showed you could punish? Why didn't you believe then? Where was the faith? Where was the ability? I remember one guy joked and said, don't go to the masjid and pray. What's the point? You don't believe in the power of Allah. You don't believe in your ability to make change. You don't believe status quos can change. You don't believe there is possibilities. You don't believe in it. So why bother? Or just stay home and be miserable. It was so close, Layan Muhammad and West Streeting. Layan did not lose because West Streeting was strong. Layan lost because the Muslims did not have enough faith in their ability to make change. Because they were resigned to a state of defeatism. They did not want to believe change was possible. And Layan lost by 500 painful votes. Here you can see, if the Democrats truly felt at ease, they would not go and try to get Jill Stein off those ballots. If they truly felt at ease, they would not be trying to do outreach programs privately to Muslim communities to tell them, I need to support genocide, but the other side is worse, you'll still come back to me anyway. And this is the point that I'm saying, in that when it comes to November, if Zionism wins, if Harris wins, if it becomes a political mantra that you can win a second term on the back of genocide, then Zionism will have been rescued, not because Zionism delivered Harris, but because Muslims went to the rescue of Zionism when they had the chance to finally break it.
Okay, so the biggest threat to Zionism is Harris losing because of genocide, and the biggest threat to Muslim politics is Harris winning because of genocide. We get that on the national level now. What should we do on the local level then? Because Congress also matters.
I'm simply analyzing the situation. I think there is a race. For example, I was in Michigan with some friends and somebody was remarking that there is a race between John James, an incumbent, versus somebody called Karl Mallinga. In the last elections, the result between them was very tight. When you look up the website that tells you the finance and donations that the two candidates have got for this elections, John James is on $6 million, Karl Mallinga is on 600K. Meaning that it's clear that Zionists are not taking any risks in that race. They don't want it to be close between Karl Mallinga and between John James. Karl Mallinga is not particularly pro-Palestinian, but rather John James, who is a firm ally, pro-genocide and the like, there is an attempt to make sure that there is no risk that he might lose because of his support for genocide. In that area, there is very much a possibility that those who are anti-genocide could topple John James if they go out and support Karl Mallinga. In this local race, it makes a huge difference because John James is somebody who could genuinely be toppled in that regard. In Seattle, you have an area where there is Adam Smith, who supports genocide, who is, I think, head of one of the committees on foreign armed services or things like that. The numbers show that it is possible he could lose because there's enough anti-genocide voters that could topple him. He's up against another Democrat candidate who's anti-genocide, and there is a possibility that anti-genocide could come and topple. In red areas, the same. There are areas where, I mean, here in Texas, many areas where anti-genocide votes in areas, Muslims and non-Muslims, have the ability to swing. I've seen areas where the swing is less than 10,000 votes.
So do you think we should base it off of the parties? Like, should we also punish the Democrats on local levels, or should we punish them based on...
I don't think it's to do with parties.
It doesn't have to do with party on a local level.
On a local level.
Okay.
I think even on a national level, I actually think that it's about pro-genocide and anti-genocide. Because if it was based on party, then instead of voting Harris, go vote Trump. The reason why many people are struggling to vote for Trump is Trump is also supporting the genocide. So the underlying denominator is whoever supported genocide, I will vote against. The dilemma then comes in that what if the other candidate, the one who is the rival candidate of the other, also supports Zionism, also supports the genocide? And I think herein lies in terms of what do we consider to be a victory? Are we trying to deliver candidates to power? Are we trying to send a message that an incumbent will lose their seat for supporting genocide, even if the other side is also pro-Zionist? We just want to topple who's in power, we'll topple the next one, and we'll topple the next one, until it becomes clear you can't keep your seat if you support Zionism. And I'll give you an example that illustrates this best. Dr. Hatem Bazian describes Ohio, describes Cincinnati in particular, as one of the hearts of Zionism in America. The incumbent in Cincinnati is a guy called Greg Landsman, who only has a 16,000 majority in an area that has about 30, 40,000 Muslims, and add to that the numbers of those anti-genocide votes in that particular area. Greg Landsman is aware that his support is tenuous, which is why he refused to meet with a lot of the Muslim constituents in his area. If Greg Landsman loses, the other side is also pro-Zionist, the Republican candidate. But what would the journalists write if Greg Landsman loses in Cincinnati? Will they write Zionism is safe because although Greg Landsman loses, the other candidate is also Zionist? Or would the journalist write that Greg Landsman loses in the heart of Zionism in America precisely because he supported Zionism? Greg Landsman loses his seat in Zionist stronghold because he supported Zionism. Imagine those headlines across America where journalists start looking at all these incumbents and they say, okay, on the face of it, it looks like all of these candidates are still pro-Israel, but I want to understand why these candidates lost. And they go and they find that there are these surge of votes, just like in Toronto, there was a mayoral election in Toronto, I think Mississauga, though I could be wrong, where there was a candidate neck and neck. One candidate anti-genocide, one candidate pro-genocide. And when it looked like it wasn't sure who would win, Muslims, when they found out, the Muslims there usually don't go and engage in this particular area where she was running. So some Muslims, they went and they said, listen, it doesn't matter what their policies are. One is pro-Gaza, one is anti. One is pro-genocide, one is anti-genocide. Vote parish, vote Gaza. Vote parish, vote Gaza. Vote parish. The last 4 days, she saw a surge in support because these people who don't usually vote came out. And they managed to topple the pro-genocide candidate. If you can establish in America an assessment, because I think after November, if Harris loses, there will be a fierce PR campaign on the part of Zionists to try to shout as loud as possible that she didn't lose because of Gaza. She didn't lose because of Zionism. She didn't lose because of Zionism. And that's why the local level is more important than the national level. In that the national level needs to be reinforced by what you do at the local level. This is just analysis. I'm not saying what people should do. But if a number of incumbents are toppled because they supported genocide, and it's clearly demonstrated that these people went. And bear in mind, you don't necessarily need to vote for the other candidate. What you could do, there is an area in Pennsylvania where what they are planning is to put a third candidate up. So that all the votes that would be required to carry the pro-genocide candidate to victory, they would go to that third party, and therefore that would tip it. So as a conscience, you wouldn't vote for either, but just as you'd vote third party, you take away enough votes that would be required for the pro-genocide candidate to win, that would mean that that candidate would lose. And when people look at the numbers of those who went to those third party, they'd be like, if the pro-genocide candidate had those votes, they would have won. But the reason they didn't get those votes is because they supported genocide. The point is, putting all the semantics and nitty-gritty details aside, if you create a wave across America where incumbents are losing because they supported genocide, I think that would be an unprecedented blow to the Zionist lobby from which I cannot see them recovering from, especially given that the narrative in America towards Israel is now changing. The ADL chief came out and said, part of the Israeli lobby, came out and said, we've lost a whole generation of Americans to social media who've now become pro-Palestine. I don't think Zionists will ever be able to recover from it, especially given the narrative amongst right-wing media is that Tucker Carlson is now saying we should cut funding for the Israelis. Candace Owens is coming out and saying, I was pro-Israel before October 7th. And after what happened October 7th, I've started looking into what Israel does. And I can't, as a Christian, accept what it does. Ta-Nehisi Coates on the other side goes to Palestine for 10 days. And you've seen him on every single channel saying it's apartheid. And they tell him, yeah, but, and they get the details. He says, nothing you can tell me can justify apartheid. I'm an African-American. Nothing you say can justify Jim Crow laws. Nothing you say to me can justify what you guys are doing. I'm sorry. Maybe there's rights and wrongs here, but not what you're doing is unjustifiable by all criteria. I think given these narratives are changing, even as Zionism spends so much money to regain control of the narrative, I think in this very unique climate, in this very unique election where it's so tight that your vote matters, in this very unique election where Muslims just so happen to be concentrated in swing states, Muslim Americans who belong to America, Muslim Americans happen to be so tightly concentrated in those swing states that just so happen to be the states that will decide the elections because the elections are so tight. It's set up to create a momentum that Zionists will never be able to recover from. And not only that, and I finish on this point, ordinary Americans are now asking, the more they read, the more they learn. The more they learn, the more they're concerned. The more they're concerned, the more they start asking more questions until it's get to a point where the ordinary American is now asking serious questions. I'm struggling to access healthcare, but Biden can find $14 billion to give to Sisi and Jordan to facilitate ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Where's the American interest in that? The ordinary American is asking that when I drive by places in LA or these other places, I see homelessness everywhere. Biden can find $14 billion to give to help to facilitate ethnic cleansing and billions more on top to send aircraft carriers to Israel to help them commit genocide. Why doesn't he come and fix, if the money is available, why can't he you can resolve homelessness with that money? Why doesn't he spend it here? Hurricane Helene in Florida ravages Florida. On the same day, Biden is able to find $8 billion to give to the Israelis to continue their genocide, but is struggling to find enough money to help to support those innocents in Florida who are suffering the ramifications of the hurricane.
What was it, like $750 on
$750 million? Exactly. The point being is that Americans are now, when they're asking questions, they're saying, okay, that's all fine, but I didn't realize I was paying for it. I didn't realize that. I mean, which government does this belong to, America or to the Israelis? You're telling me to be patient on police reform. You're telling me to be patient on healthcare, on homelessness, etc. You're telling me there's no money for it. Where are you finding all this bottomless end of money to support genocide, to support all this bombing campaign that Israel is doing? What is the hold that they have on you? That means you don't want to spend money on the American citizen. You want to spend it abroad to blow up the heads of Palestinian children, to go and blow up the legs of 6-year-olds like Sidra, to go and shoot 362 bullets, American weapons, American guns. Why do we have so much money for something thousands of miles away, but not enough to help me fix those highways or freeways that are in Texas? You keep telling me there's no money, but here is. Why are you as a congressperson adamantly supporting and voting for giving this money for the Israelis, but you're not voting for the reasons I voted for you, which was so that you would look after my own domestic territory, you would look after, you know, the issues that I have here in my local area? Ordinary Americans are now asking, hang on a second, what is our vested interest in giving all this money to the Israelis, and why is it not being spent here in America itself? And I think that's why in this climate, if Zionist candidates start losing, I think that the Zionists will not be able to recover from it. And I think that if Muslim voters and anti-genocide voters can tolerate and put up and resist the pressure that might come from Trump afterwards, I do think that that short-term pain will make a long-term impact that might transform the way America operates into one perhaps that is more just, one that is more righteous. And that's why I always argue that those Muslims who say we're going to punish genocide, it's important also to remember, in punishing genocide, you're saving the heart of America. In punishing genocide, you're becoming the conscience of American society. You're reminding Americans that justice matters. You're reminding them that the righteous causes matter. You are conveying to the Americans the righteous causes, and they are listening to you, and they are being moved by it. You're seeing it on social media. Meghan Rice becoming Muslim, Sean King becoming Muslim, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, all these other various. You're seeing how their opinions are changing because you're the voice of the heart of America. You are saving America by insisting that they uphold justice. And that's why I argue that do not present this idea of punishing genocide as one that is fighting America. You are rescuing America in terms of a society that is supposed to be righteous and just, which is what they claim that they want to be. You are the ones who are pushing American society towards one that is just by holding your ground on the issue of Gaza, raising your voices for Gaza, raising your voices for Palestine. And I'll finish on what one Zionist Jew said in the protest in London. I saw it on the Middle East Eye video. They asked her, they said, why are you here in the protest for Palestinians? You know, to end the genocide. She said, before October 7th, I grew up in a Zionist environment. I'm a Jew. I grew up being told that Israel is the state that we have to support unconditionally. After October 7th, I started reading. And when I started reading, I could not believe what I saw. I couldn't believe this is what Israel is. And he says, what is Israel? She says, a colonial state. It's an apartheid state. People are realizing their hearts are moving, and that's the power of da'wah. And that's why I think that for those who are insisting that they want to rescue Harris, I tell them, don't save Zionism when it's buckling. Punish Zionism. This is a turning point in American society, and it's being brought about because people are increasingly showing the courage and bravery to say, yes, I might struggle in the next 2-3 years, but the cause of justice is worth it, and this will break the invincibility of Zionism, and then will have sweeping consequences for America at home and abroad.
So you're basically saying on a local level, Muslims should prioritize whether they're Zionist supporting or not as a candidate and vote opposite depending on what the answer is.
In some areas, vote opposite. In some areas, vote for a third wing or a third party or a third candidate, because that will take the votes away from the incumbent that they had in the last election. It will take the votes away that will result in a drastic decrease in votes that might allow the other candidate to win. But in terms of a moral compass, you will not have voted for either Zionist, you will have voted for the third candidate. So sometimes taking the vote away is enough.
Yeah, so don't even actually care about their policies. Are they Zionists or not, or Zionist supporting? And you can write one in. Even if there's not a third party, you can write one in.
You can write one in.
If politics and spirituality go hand in hand, one of the main topics that American Muslims have been wrestling with are politicians like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Talib. And we've seen the impact that they've had being there in Congress. And people like Yasser Qadi, who you were with yesterday, have gotten backlash for supporting them or saying that we should. Should we as American Muslims expect righteous politicians? Is that even an expectation we should be looking for? Or should we hold politicians to a different standard than other spiritual leaders? Hey, Salam guys, I'm very excited to finally release our Patreon account where you can become a monthly supporter and invest in the Ansari podcast and get ad-free episodes, exclusive interviews that are usually unreleased in the final cut. And if you want to see us bring on more and better guests, more and better equipment, and more and better shows, then subscribe and support us at patreon.com/Ansari podcast. We've partnered with Cure, the original black seed company founded by a Palestinian woman. These are some of the best gummies that I've ever had. They're black seed and honey gummies with a splash of apple cider vinegar. You can find them at cureyourworld.com or follow them on Instagram at cureyourworld and use the Ansari code Ansari15 to get 15% off. Get yours today.
I am of the opinion that in life generally, what you invest, you get back. The level of effort you put in is the level of outcome that you get. If you don't engage, you don't vote, you don't register, you don't go to your town hall meetings, you don't go on your school boards, You don't go and get involved in the social issues the way that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did when in Quraysh he would go to their tribal leaders, he'd go and try and mediate their affairs, he'd go and present Islam as an alternative, he would go in the marketplace and try to tell them this is how the market should be. Muhammad Asad in his book Road to Mecca, he says that one of the things about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is that you have to remember that Christianity was already being preached in Quraysh. Why did Quraysh not repress Christianity the way that they repressed Islam? It's because Christianity's emphasis was on the self. Keep it in your masajid, or keep it in your churches, keep it in your homes. It's your personal relationship with Allah, your personal relationship with God. Until that's perfect, you shouldn't really be going out in society and asking for changes in society, because ultimately it's about the personal relationship between you and God. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ doesn't even receive the full Quran. He receives Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, and he receives a small portion of the wahi, and he's already going out in the middle of the Kaaba telling him their whole society needs to change, their business practices need to change, and he's trying to get more and more people towards his particular ideas. It's that the Prophet ﷺ was out and involved in their social issues that upset Quraysh so much, because the more he did so, the more he was in their gatherings, the more people that were coming to his deen and his religion, they would prefer him to be outside of the system than in the system. They preferred him to be outside rather than engaged. They preferred that because if he had done that, they would have just added the 366 God in the Quraysh and said, come and do your tawaf in the morning, we'll do in the evening. It's what Islam meant. The reason why I link it here is, I think Rashida and Ilhan are accurate representations of the level of engagement of the Muslim community with the society that is around them. I think that Rashida and Ilhan are an accurate reflection of the level of effort that Muslims put into da'wah on a social level. I don't mean on a personal level. I mean on a social level. In the way, for example, there is a story in Los Angeles when I went there to LA, and I met a group of parents when I was there. So they were telling me that after October 7th, the school put out a statement in support of the Israelis, and they were really, really upset about it. Not because they support whatever October 7th of these issues. They were really upset about it in that, why is a school getting involved in this? Why are we putting our kids in? So they initially went to the school board meeting and the like, but Muslims don't normally engage. So it was only a handful of them, while on the other side was a huge number of them. So eventually, because they were desperate on this particular issue, because it hit close to home, they managed to get the LA Times to write an article about the issue itself, which moved the waters enough that when they went 3 weeks later to a board meeting, they refined their argument to that, you know, these are kids in school. Why are they being dragged into issues that are thousands of, like they're 13, 12-year-olds. Like, why are we getting them? Why are we getting the school caught up in this? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in my opinion, it's as if he sent them a powerful ally. There was a Jewish lady there who accepted this argument. She said, it's true. Why are we getting 12, 13-year-olds caught up in it? The school should retract its statement and put a neutral one instead. So they put out a neutral statement. When I visited them, the school had just put out the neutral statement when I came, and the parents were telling me the story. So one of them said, we want to do a walkout. And somebody on the table said, why? They said, to show them power. Power in what sense? To show them that, you know, we're serious, that we can't tolerate it, you know, like, and then one person on the table said, yeah, but we won. Like, they withdrew the statement, they put a neutral statement. So the guy looked confused and he said, well, what are we supposed to do then? So somebody on the table said, well, given the superintendent is going to be hanging over our kids for the next 7 years, it doesn't really make sense to make him into an enemy. Is there a way that we could make him into a friend? For the one who's your enemy today, tomorrow might become your warmest ally. Is there a way that we can make the enemy into a warmest ally? So eventually they agreed to take baklawa to the superintendent, to go and say to the superintendent, not to bribe him in any way, to say to him, it was never personal. We were worried about our kids' welfare. We don't want to be your enemies. We want to work with you. We want to be your friends. We want to sit and talk to you. We want our kids to be safe. We want them to have a good education. We're actually on the same page here. We're actually trying to achieve the same things. Why should we achieve it separately? Let's work together and do so. He was so taken by that approach that the Zionist parents panicked at the way he flipped, that they set up what's called the Jewish Parents Association to counter these Muslim parents. But the superintendent was so impressed by their conduct that he offered them to join their Ramadan curriculum to try to explain to students what Islam is, where it stands, what is. My point is that engagement, look at how far it went when they started to engage. When you're asking about Rashida and Ilhan, let's be brutally honest, Mahmoud. To what extent would you say that Muslims engage with what is around them? They do not. To what extent do Muslims go to town hall meetings to discuss the development of the city? They do not. To what extent are Muslims engaged with the local environment to talk about issues that are relevant, whether it's roads, whether it's city planning or the like? To what extent do Muslims act as if they truly belong to the land? They don't. So when you get Rashid and Ilhan, it's an accurate reflection of the state of the Muslim mentality in America at this moment in time. But the reason why I am never harsh on Ilhan and Rashida, and why last time I think Amr Mabrouk asked me a similar question, and people thought maybe I was justifying what Ilhan and Rashida do that contravenes perhaps what we Muslims hold dear. I said because for me, it's not about Rashida and Ilhan. For me, it's about trends. It's about how things are changing. 20 years ago, there was no Rashida, no Ilhan. Impossible for any of them to even get to Congress. The reason why they get into Congress is there are more and more people starting to engage, more and more people believing we should engage. Allah created America, we should be a mercy society, we should engage. But also, I want to look at it from the other perspective. Imagine you are a racist, a fascist. Imagine you are a supremacist. Imagine that you are, somebody who wishes you could go back to the days of slavery, where you could colonize the people. Imagine you are one of those, and they still exist today. Imagine you're one who they still exist today, that the identity is changing and we don't lie and get out of here, these foreigners or whatever. Put yourself in their position where year upon year, America is changing. African Americans with more rights, more representation. Muslims with more rights, more representation. You see Hispanics, more rights, more representation. You see a new generation of white Americans who are no longer as racist as perhaps their parents or their grandparents were, because they are engaging more with those minority communities. Those communities are being normalized in their mentality, and as a result, they are no longer as hard in their racism as perhaps the generations were before, which means that when Rashida Ilhan pop up, what's the problem? I'll give them my vote. Like, why not? They're also Americans too as well, and they enter Congress. For the right winger or the like, they believe that if today is Rashid and Ilhan, they're not perfect, but if today is Rashid and Ilhan, the trajectory suggests that one day it will be a woman with hijab and abaya, that one day it will be an American Muslim, and Muslim from America. We're talking because many Americans are entering Islam, white Americans as well. Not that I believe that white Americans own America. They're also immigrants from, from Ireland or from Europe or the like. What I'm saying is that Islam will become normalized in America because the da'wah is so strong. So this is the point I'm saying, that when you ask about Rashid and Ilhan, I think they are symptoms, not the disease. I think that they are symptoms of a community whose mentality, in my opinion, is still very restricted and limited. And in my opinion, I know it sounds harsh, but dajjalic in its interpretation of what da'wah means. Because I truly believe that Muslims who are in America, this is not a foreign land. This is a land created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a land where Islam has entered the hearts of Sean King, of Megan Rice. It entered Malcolm X. It entered the hearts of all these other different white American Muslims, Hamza Yusuf and these others. It's entering their hearts. Why? Because there is a da'wah that is taking place. And that's why I argue that if you want to remedy the problems with Ilhan and Rashida in the way they represent the Muslim community, then step up and offer something better. Then step up and provide an alternative vision. Then step up and suggest a different way of how it could be done, rather than sit in the comforts of the bubble that you created and believe that da'wah is somehow almost Zionist in the way that you are a chosen people and that Islam therefore came to you as a chosen people and therefore the other side is not worthy of Islam. I'm not saying it to be harsh on the community, but more to say, and I finish on this point, but more to say that the criticism of Rashid and Ilhan is misguided. Rashid and Ilhan is an accurate reflection of even the Muslim who is praying in the masjid, who refuses to go and engage. Rashida represents you. Ilhan represents you. The fact that you don't like it is not a fault of Rashida and Ilhan. The fact that you don't like it is because you don't like what is in the mirror. You don't like what the mirror of how your community looks like. You don't like that the mirror has been put in your face and says, this is the result of your da'wah and engagement as it stands right now. And you're trying to say, get it away from me, get it away from me. Whereas I'm saying, accept it, this is what it looks like now. And how can you alter it and change it so that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, perhaps the representation looks much better? And remember, the two third-party candidates, who did they appoint as their vice presidents? Two Muslims, whether it's Rudolph Bilal Ware or whether it's, I think Maryam, her name is the Cornel West's vice president. But why did they appoint those two? It's because Islam is becoming normalized in a way whereby genuine Muslim anger over Gaza that is uncompromising is enough to make these third-party candidates believe we can normalize that sentiment. There's no compromise on our anger for Gaza. There's no compromise in the Zionist support for the genocide. But why have these third-party candidates said that I would rather have the Muslim support than the Zionist support? It's because Islam is starting to become normalized as more people engage, more people raise their voices, and more people make it clear that they're willing to manifest their power in America, and therefore people should take note, which is why Ilhan and Rashida have had to adapt and why more Muslims are now engaging. I'm not saying that the solution is within the system. What I'm saying is systems are always adapting and changing, and the more you engage, the more it will adapt. So engage until Allah gives you an alternative scenario.
Where do you think Zionists are most vulnerable right now, and where are Muslims most vulnerable when it comes to political strategy?
I think that Zionism, the lobby is dependent upon their ability to deliver candidates through financial means. Their power is built on fear. Stand against me, I punish you. I think Muslim power is in their ability that in an environment of freedom of speech, let them speak, let them address American society. And it doesn't matter how many millions the Zionists spend, the hearts of the Americans will always naturally incline to what the Muslim preaches, whether it's on issues of family values or the issues of justice and the like. The reason I think that the Zionists wanted to get social media or get TikTok banned or to shadow ban accounts or the like is because they realize that it doesn't matter how many millions they're spending. The ordinary voice and the power of da'wah is so powerful that all of the millions spent to maintain control of the narrative, those millions are being spent on a PR narrative that the Ummah is breaking for free, that the Muslims are breaking without the financial impetus. And this is the reason why I know many people focus on the resources of the Zionists. But I always argue, what made the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ so terrifying for Quraysh that they had to repress him even though he didn't have an army or wealth? What made them panic was that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's message was so convincing, it was so powerful, it was so strong, it resonated so deeply with society that had been used to hedonism and had been used to injustice and the like. It resonated so deeply that Umar ibn al-Khattab would look at the material supremacy of the Quraysh and say the word of the Prophet ﷺ is better. That Mus'ab ibn Umair radiallahu anhu would look at the supremacy of Quraysh, he'd see Congress and say, he'd look at supremacy and say, no, what they're saying means more to me, is worth more. That Hamza radiallahu anhu would look at the material supremacy of the Quraysh and he would say, no, there's something about the word of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. I know he doesn't have an army and doesn't have wealth like these guys do. I know he doesn't have power the way these guys do. But there's something about his message that means I'd rather stand up against that power and give him power than succumb to this overwhelming power. And that's why I argue with Muslims, do not underestimate the power of da'wah. Do not underestimate the power of talking to people. Do not underestimate the power of engaging with people. Do not underestimate the power of sitting with a group of people who might be hostile. Do not underestimate your ability to be able to convince them to see things in a different way. And that's why I think what Gaza has done to the community is, it started to make us realize, hang on a second, Candace Owens can actually flip. Tucker Carlson can actually flip. Thomas Massey can actually flip. All these Ta-Nehisi Coates went to Palestine for 10 days. Can you imagine if he'd gone for a month or 2 months or stayed there for a year? Can you imagine how much harder he would be talking about the issue? The point being is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always told you this is the power of da'wah, but perhaps we didn't believe it. And I think one of the reasons that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his seerah is so terrifying, is that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam does not wait for power to move. He doesn't wait for the army in order to convey his message. He doesn't wait for the wealth and the lobbying wealth to convey the message. He goes out, Ya ayyuhal muddathir qum fa'andir wa rabbaka fakabbir wa thiyabaka fatahhir. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is ordered, stand up and go and warn and go and convey. Even before the Quran is fully revealed, he only has Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq and short sections of the wahi, and he's immediately being told to go out, and Allah continues to send during that journey. He's not like Muslims of today who are waiting for the final product before they move. He's moving on the basis that the final product will not come until he moves, and Allah reinforces that. And that's why I argue that when you talk about Muslims long term, I don't know what Allah has planned for America. I don't know what Allah has planned for Aqsa. I know that He's planned victory for Al-Aqsa, but I don't know how it's going to come about. I don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned for the dunya, and neither did any of the prophets that were sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the point is not to know what's going to happen next. The point is to appreciate the powers that you have, which will allow you to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you by the change in circumstance, such as these elections when you have the ability to punish genocide, such as these elections when you have the ability to break the invincibility of Zionism, such as the opportunity to engage with your school boards, to try to get them to stop supporting the Zionism as a knee-jerk reaction, but to tell them to temper their tones and engage in a dialogue that can help provide safe spaces for our children whereby they're not oppressed by the Zionism of continuous engagement with your school boards, whether it's going to the town halls to get the town halls to try to help them to fend off the threat of Zionism that kept threatening them with media attention if they didn't come out and condemn October 7th, going to them and tell them we also exist here as constituents. That didn't start on October 7th. It started long before October 7th. You need a more nuanced, either stay out of it or embark on the more nuanced. It's this engagement by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the point that I want to finish on that addresses your question, even though it does sound vague. What I'm actually saying is this. The seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he goes to give da'wah in Taif and they stone him and kick him out. And he makes a dua where he says, please don't destroy them, and maybe it's my eloquence that was at fault in terms of conveying them. If an incident like Taif happened today, how would you react? What would be your inclination? And how would you judge the tactic of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The reason people cringe when they hear this is because their immediate reaction would be, what was Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing going to Taif, to a hostile territory like that? But when they think about it, the reason they don't say that he was wrong is because when they start peeling off the layers that they didn't realize exist, they come to realize the Prophet ﷺ actually was right. He was doing what he was sent to do. He was doing what he was sent to do in conveying the message of justice, conveying the message of Islam, being a mercy to mankind, even if they did not want that mercy. He was going there and telling them, and eventually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded his efforts in that Taif became Muslim. I always say that you read about the endings of a lot of the prophets, I think the question most Muslims should ask themselves is, it's not about whether you achieve what you want or not. But supposing that you don't achieve it, are you content with what Allah has written for you in this dunya? That you use your talents, you deploy it, but perhaps your role is just to pave the way. Perhaps you might meet an ending like Ashab al-Ukhdud, or like we spoke about earlier. Would you accept that as your role? Would you accept to be Sumayya radiallahu anha? And there's a problem even with the framing of the question. It suggests Sumayya somehow less. She's not radiallahu ta'ala anha. She's in Firdaus with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She's happy where she is. We're the ones strong into Jannah. But I'm saying these perspectives, would I be content? Would I be happy? There's almost like a debate in your heart as to, Ya Allah, you've asked something from me and I want to do it. And if I want to do it, I want to do it comfortably. But your seerah is all about struggle. Is there a way there can be a seerah where there is not that struggle? And then I finish on this particular point that really hits the point home. When we want to show our kids what success looks like, what do? We go to the richest area in the city, or the nicest area, and we say, son, daughter, when you grow up, I want you to study hard, work hard, so you can be successful like the dwellers of these homes, like the drivers of these cars. It's what we do even in our own Muslim community, right? So there is one sheikh who said to me, Sami, what's the hardest part of all these talks and the podcast that you're doing? I told him the hardest part is, how do you convince the ummah to do what is right and convince them that the price they will pay for it, they won't avoid a price, there will be a price. The price that they pay for it will be worth paying. And he said to me, because Sami, sometimes, I've told the story many times, but فَذَكَرْ نَفَعَتِ الذِّكْرَ. He said, the problem is, Sami, sometimes Islam can be problematic for many Muslims in the sense that our criteria for success is be like the dweller of that 3-4 bedroom house in Dallas and, you know, the ones who drive these cars. But he said to me, measure the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in this case by the measure of success that we teach in our kids. And you're like, better than them, more successful. He says, why? Because by that criteria of success, the one with the big home in Dallas appears more successful. Why have you suddenly flipped? Why has your brain gone flipped to a sudden defense of the Prophet ﷺ being more successful? He said it's because your criteria of success that Islam presents is problematic for the modern criteria of success that we've established. What was the relationship like, he said, between the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and Quraysh in the first 40 years? And this is what directly links to the issue we were talking about America. What was his relationship like with Quraysh? It was excellent. Two tribes are beefing, go to Muhammad bin Abdullah to resolve it. You can't do any better than him. He was the golden boy. Your cousin is cheating you in business. Then go do business to Muhammad bin Abdullah. He cheats no one. There's a caravan going to Syria. Khadija anha wants somebody to look after it who won't cheat her. You can't do better than Muhammad bin Abdullah. Go. When he walks in, everybody loves him. They love him for who he is, his character. The status quo is that they love him. When do his problems begin? Does his character change? No. Does he do a horrible action, hasha, or that? No, like nothing changes in terms of his character. Nothing changes. So what changes at 40 years of age? He gets the wahi, but what changes specifically, Mahmoud? What changes is he starts to challenge the status quo by telling them that this environment that promotes injustice cannot stand. You need to change it. You need to change the way that you treat your women, the way that you treat your daughters. Stop burying your daughters alive. There is one God and Muhammad is his messenger. You need to start treating each other well in business. What's this hierarchy in society that you have? How did you enslave people when their mothers bore them free? What did Quraysh resent in his message? Why did they persecute him? The Prophet ﷺ, when he came with the message, he thought it was a lovely message to tell people stop the genocide in Gaza, to tell people he thought it was a lovely message. Who would deny this message? When Waraqa ibn Nawfal, the uncle of Khadija anha, says to him, oh, how I wish would be alive when your people persecute you. He said, why would my people persecute me? Why would they kick me out? It's a beautiful message. Why would they revolt? The reason why is the message of justice has always shaken society. The message of justice has always resonated. The message of justice always brings about revolution. But there's something else here, and this is the point that I wanted to make. The Prophet ﷺ has Quraysh, they start to repress him. And now, you know the way that in the beginning when I said that when your son or daughter buys that big house, we say you've succeeded. When they buy the nice car, we say, MashaAllah, you've succeeded. Point to the 40 years of age to 63 years of age. At what point do we point? The same way we pointed at your son buying the house. Where do we point to the life of the Prophet ﷺ and say, this is the point where he succeeded? Point to it. I can see everybody cringing suddenly. You look and you think his struggles do not... He said, let me rephrase the question. When do his struggles end? Because the reason we say the house of success is your struggles have ended. You have a home. When do his struggles end? They don't end until his dying breath. He said the magnificence of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was not in the outcomes he achieved, nor in his establishment of the modern day success. It was his willingness to persevere in the struggle relentlessly. It was in his willingness that struggle did not make him give up the message. It didn't make him stop campaigning for justice. It didn't stop him mobilizing and moving. It didn't stop him conveying the message. And I didn't appreciate this point until I saw an interview, and this is perhaps the best way to finish. I didn't realize it until I saw an interview of this Turkish boy with a presenter, 13 years of age. I think he's an actor in Kurulush Osman series. And the presenter asks him, what is your dream in life? He says, my dream is to meet the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, 13 years of age, I was not saying those things. My dream was to play for Arsenal and to play, football. So first of all, I'm thinking, my goodness, this boy, wow. So I'm interested. So the presenter is shocked. So the presenter says, well, why? Like, what would you ask him? He says, I wouldn't ask my beloved Prophet anything. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the presenter says, then what would the interaction be like? He said, I want to thank him. The presenter says, thank him. He says, I want to thank him. I want to thank him that when he was stoned from Taif, it didn't stop him conveying the message. I want to thank him that when he was persecuted in Mecca, in Quraysh, by Quraysh, he didn't stop conveying the message. He didn't give up. He didn't say there's no point. He didn't just go home and say, there's no point to this. It's hopeless. Even when his Sahaba were being beaten up and he could see and his heart was broken, he kept going. It didn't stop him. Even when he didn't have an army, he kept going. It didn't stop him. Even when he didn't have the wealth, the donors, it didn't stop him. He kept going. Even when he was kicked out of Mecca, it didn't stop. He kept going. When Khadija anha died and his heart is broken, he kept going. When he lost his protection, when Abu Talib died, he kept going. When 1,000 came to exterminate him in Medina, he took his 300. He was like, I'm going to continue. I'm going to struggle. When he lost in Uhud, they didn't put him off. He kept conveying the message. He kept going and he kept going. When he dug the trench in Khandaq, when all of the tribes came against him, he kept going. He had that hope. He believed. He said, I see the pearls of Persia. He believed. He kept going. He didn't give it up. Hudaybiyah, when his Sahaba were upset, he kept going. And when he entered Mecca, he forgave them. He put aside his vengeance, his revenge. He looked at Hind, who had mutilated the uncle's body, and forgave her. He looked at Quraysh and he said, you who persecuted me, you who kicked me out of Mecca. He had the capacity to forgive them because they later carried Islam to my country of Turkey, and it entered my heart. And because it entered my heart, I was able to enter Jannah, and because I entered Jannah, I was able to sit here with you, Ya Rasulullah. None of that happens if you don't accept the struggle and you didn't persevere through the struggle. It's an appreciation. And that's why I think with the Muslims, I don't think that when they talk about what could happen in November, I don't think they talk about it from an existential perspective. I think the real issue is, Sami, I like the status quo. I'm comfortable with the status quo. I worked hard for what I built around me. Yes, my legs won't be blown off by Trump the way that Sidra's legs were blown off by Biden and Harris, by their weapons that they sent. Yes, I'm not going to lose a limb the way that the Palestinians lost him. Yes, I won't find my son one day, in a garbage bag. They've collected his limbs and they're still trying to identify him. That won't happen to me here in America. Yes, Sami, yes. That worst case scenario won't happen to me. But you see this, I worked for this and I built this, and I don't want to upset that status quo. I don't want to be that voice of justice that shook Quraysh the way the Prophet ﷺ shook Quraysh. I prefer the first 40 years of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. I don't want the 23 years. I prefer the years where the status quo was fine, not the 23 years where there was struggle. And that's what I think is the darkest element of all of this particular discussion. Do you want to vote for Harris because you truly think it's good for Palestine? Or do you want to vote for Harris because you believe the Muslim issue should stay there? Don't ask me to struggle on its behalf.
With everything that you've done and said, if there was one message you would like the Muslim Ummah to take away from your life's work, what would it be?
Move. Just keep moving. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. It doesn't matter if you succeed or fail in the dunya. Move. Keep the water flowing. Move. Keep embarking on your initiatives. If it fails once, you learn a lesson, do it again. Move. Because when you move, everything moves around you. And when you move, Allah comes running to you. And when you move, Allah takes 10 steps to you. And when you move, Allah sends the reinforcements that you need. And when you move, Allah says, يَزِدْكُمْ قُوَّةً إِلَىٰ قُوَّتِكُمْ, increases strength to your strength. And when you move, Allah يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا, He sends blessings and benefits to you. And when you move, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses the movement, sends angels to reinforce you. And when you move, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intervenes to protect you. And when you move, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who was already protecting you before, but when you move, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look at my servant, they move based on the promise. They talk about my Jannah like they want it. Have they seen it? No. Then I will promise it to them as well, based on the hadith, when they're sitting amongst the Sahaba and the angels go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, we came back from a gathering that talked about your Jannah. Allah says, have they seen it? They say no, and Allah says, then I promised it for them. Move, don't be an ummah that does nothing. Move, don't be an ummah that's silent. Move, don't be an ummah that believes that everything is done for, that there's no hope. Move, be the ummah of conscience. Move, be the voice of reason in this world. Move and deploy the talents that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you. Move and deploy the talents in anything. The Prophet ﷺ said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً, convey from me even if it's just a verse. The reason why he said just a verse is not because it's the verse that's relevant. It's say something even if it's just a verse. Don't be quiet. Say something. Do something. Do anything. Just move on the basis that Allah promises victory and you want to be a vehicle for it. And move on the basis that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَمَنْ أَرَادَ الْآخِرَةَ وَسَعَى لَهَا سَعْيَهَا وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَأُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ سَعْيُهُمْ مَشْكُورًا. Move on the basis that Allah said that those who strive, those who move, those who strive for the sake of Allah and they believe in Allah, they're striving because they seek His pleasure. They're striving because they want to be vehicles. They're striving knowing that they may not achieve the outcome they want, but Allah will deliver the outcome He wants. وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَأُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ سَعْيُهُمْ مَشْكُورًا. Allah says their striving, their movement, their mobilization is rewarded and is thanked. And remember the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is not anything you achieve in this dunya. For me, the ultimate goal is, and may Allah bless Shaykh Umar Sulaiman with his Jannah series, he made me imagine it. The goal, and I've started really thinking about this a lot, because death is coming no matter what. At some point, we will all taste death. But the goal, in my opinion, is that what I think is, what can I do in my lifetime so that when my soul leaves my body, I don't hear Ya ayyatuha nafsul khabitha, oh disgusting soul that used to tell Mahmoud, what's the point of your podcast? Soul that used to say, what's the point in mobilizing? What's the point in donating? What's the point in moving? What's the point in raising your voice? What's the point in social media? You think you're going to liberate the ummah? What's the point of this? I won't hear that. What I hear is, Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna, oh beautiful blessed soul, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. Come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at this book, mashallah. Look how you kept moving, the words you use, the social media you use, the way you used to keep going, the way you had the faith. Yes, we know you used to weep in the night at what happens in Gaza. Yes, we know it was hard to get up in the morning because your heart was broken. Yes, we know you felt the despair and the sadness sadness, but you didn't doubt the promise of Allah. You got up and you kept going. Yes, you didn't know what the point of this podcast would be when you're repeating a lot of the points that you said elsewhere, but you kept doing it in the hope that maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show it to somebody who hasn't seen it before, and maybe it might move them as well, because the only talent that you've got is somehow that you can move your tongue quickly enough, and people perhaps they don't need to do times 1.75, they have to do times 0.75 to understand what on earth I'm saying. Maybe based on that promise something will happen. It's like earlier when we were talking about the idea, what if nothing happens in November? What if nothing happens in November? Will I be content? Will I accept it? Is my aim to achieve something in November, on November 4th or November 5th? Or is my aim to be somebody who tries to say, Ya ibadallah, please, Rabbi inni da'awtu qawmi layla wa nahara. I've called on my people day and night. I'm trying desperately to call on them to do something to punish with regards to Gaza. Don't let this be a world with injustice. Let there be some justice in the world. Let those who committed genocide lose. Let them pay a price for it. Let these people go and deliver that defeat so that the world knows that genocide doesn't win you a second term. Allahumma, in my limited wisdom, in my limited talents, though you bless me and I'm blessed and I'm happy with the blessings that you gave me, this is how I've interpreted this moment in time, to use my efforts in the way of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might be pleased with. And that's the point. Move. You don't know what you'll be able to change. You don't know what will happen. We didn't know that boycott would lead to McDonald's closing 150 stores and its share price dropping. We didn't know that Starbucks boycotting it would lead to its share price dropping. We didn't know that if we stop going to Starbucks and McDonald's and start going to the Yemeni cafes instead, that they would soar and be able to open branches all across America. We didn't know that we could get Macron to call for an arms embargo on the Israelis. We didn't know that ICJ could drag Israel through the courts on charges of genocide, that we could push a public shift so much that the international institutions would now call on Israel and call it genocide. We didn't know that the ICJ could issue an advisory note saying that Israel is in breach of Article 3, meaning it's an apartheid state. We didn't know that the public pressure could force Ireland, Spain and Norway to recognize a Palestinian state, leaving Biden scrambling to say, why are you guys doing this when we didn't give you permission to? We didn't know that when Biden forbade and banned funding for UNRWA to try to break the back of the Palestinians, we didn't know our public pressure could make Canada reverse and go back to funding it, and UK reverse and go back to funding it. We didn't know that our public pressure could make Australia withdraw from the Red Sea Alliance against the Houthis and argue instead that there should be an end to that, instead that there should be some negotiated settlement. Their stance is still horrible, but in any case, we didn't know that we could get million-man protests in London that included Jews who are horrified by what Israel is doing, and now they are standing side by side with the Palestinians. We didn't know that we could get AXA and Itochu and these other companies to leave Israel and get Moody's to downgrade its economy twice because of the boycott and because the impact of the ICJ, they don't want to be dragged for genocide. We didn't know that our voice on TikTok, on social media, could make all these hearts flip and American society flip in such a way that the new generation is overwhelmingly Palestinian. We didn't know. We knew it after we moved. So if we moved in this limited capacity and achieved this, imagine what we could achieve if we really move.
Well, in the spirit of getting you to say something unique on a podcast, you often speak very positively about the Muslim community and often negatively about the Zionists. What is one thing that is actually positive that the Zionists do, whether strategically, tactically, morally, politically, and what is one thing that is negative that the Muslims do?
I think the Zionists, I don't want to use the word positive, but what I will say is this. I think there is a difference between the commitment of the Zionists to what they want to achieve and the commitment of the Muslims of what they want to achieve. And I'll highlight it like this. Biden was asked in March, are you not worried that Muslims will abandon you and cost you the swing states? And he said, no, because the other side want to do a Muslim ban. What Biden said, what clicked in my head when he said that was, Muslims are people of Wahan, Zionists are not. The idea that Auntie Halima can't come through the airport and that they will have to spend money, Muslims, instead to go and fly out of America to go see Auntie Halima on those 8-9 hour flights is so daunting and so worrying that they are willing to forgive me for committing a genocide. The wahan, the love of what they have now. But Zionists, if I stop the genocide, they will throw the kitchen sink at me to make sure I lose. Zionists are people of principle in this regard, the Muslims are not. And that's why I think that in all of this, I know it's been 12 months and we've been saying, please guys, punish genocide, please. But I think that at this particular moment in time, it's not that I believe it in a positive or negative. It's rather an observation that Zionists are wholeheartedly committed to something. I wish that Muslims could also be committed with the same commitment. And I'll finish on a positive note. Having gone across America, there's a change. There's clearly a change, even amongst the Muslim community. People are becoming braver. They're becoming more courageous. They are saying things they weren't saying before. And also, I think that based on my own experience of America, people are saying we want to do something now. We can't go back to the status quo the way it was before. And I think that the fact that you see the Muslim organizations falling over one another, being lambasted by the community, shows that now they become so disconnected from the community because the community has now gone one way, that they want to do something different. They want to stand for justice, while the organizations are desperately finding how can we preserve a status quo that protects what we built. The community is moving forward, and I think there's much more to be hopeful for than to despair over.
Would you ever get on a debate show, Avon Levy or Piers Morgan? Would you ever do one of those debate shows?
The question implies that would you do one of those debate shows yourself? Sami, would you do it? I'm wary of putting myself at the center of this question, or even the center of the story. I think that if you accept yourself to be a vehicle, the question would be, do you think that it would be of benefit if you were invited on Piers Morgan, if you're invited on this? If there is benefit, yes. If there's not, there's no point massaging my own ego by going there and getting thousands and thousands of views in a beef match between the two. And my day job is a political analyst. I'm a geopolitical risk consultant. My day job is to find solutions to crises, to strategically navigate them. If there is strategic benefit in it, great. If I feel I won't do a good job, why would I go and abuse the cause for the sake of just some appearance on camera? And I think that's why, if you can alter the mentality to where am I best suited in terms of my talents, I think that answers the question much easier than, if it serves on Piers Morgan, then great. If it's not, then there's no point. Like, I give an example. Piers Morgan kept asking everybody, do you condemn, do you condemn, do you condemn? And it was a nasty question. Because he doesn't ask, do you condemn occupation, do you condemn colonization, do you condemn the thousands of Palestinian hostages in Israeli prisons from before October 7th? Do you condemn that 2023 was the worst year in killing for a while in terms of Israelis killing Palestinian kids in Tulkarem and all these other places? He didn't ask, do you condemn that? It was a trap to say, do you condemn? And I remember I couldn't think of a good answer for it. So I was like, there's no way I'm going on these shows to answer that question. I will not allow myself to go and give an answer that is not proper and that does justice to the Palestinian cause. Until I saw Mu'in Rabbani in a podcast. He gave a wonderful answer to Benny Morris and Destiny. It was him, Noah Finkelstein, and Benny Morris and Destiny. They were debating. I was listening to it when I was driving between Miami and Jacksonville. So Mu'in Rabbani is asked, and they tried to trap him, do you condemn? And he said, as far as the killing of civilians is concerned, everybody is condemned under every, and when we find out how many civilians were killed, of course, killing civilians is condemnable. As far as the act of an occupied people making an attempt to take occupied land, that's a right that's guaranteed under international law. International law guarantees that right. International law recognizes occupied land. They recognize an occupied people. International law recognizes resistance. I thought that was a wonderful answer to the question. And the reason why I'm answering like this is, I would not allow myself to go on a debate where I cannot answer the question properly. I'd rather decline and do it until I find people who are more knowledgeable on certain affairs, certain issues. And it's like Bassem Youssef. What I liked about Bassem Youssef, albeit I'm aware that he played a tragic and horrific role in the coup that took place in Egypt that toppled the democratic transition, but set that aside for a second. When he did an interview asking, how did you prepare for the Piers Morgan show? He said, I had like 5 researchers. And I spent ages, really condensing it into sound bites. I knew the audience. Like, he gave it, it's justice. He didn't just go turn up and say, he prepared. He gave it justice, etc. And I think if every Muslim can prepare in a similar manner, I think it doesn't matter what debate you go in, you'll win every one, inshallah.
Sami Hamdi, thank you so much for joining the Ansari podcast. It was an absolute honor and pleasure having you on.
Barakallah fik, Habib. May Allah bless you and reward you, inshallah.
And thank you guys for listening to the Ansari podcast. Habib brother Sami, alf shukr.